All right, so now you've mastered utilizing Zoom.us as your main meeting scheduling kind of software. So you may do one-on-ones, conferencing, different kind of organizational meetings in the Zoom.us account. Let's take another perspective and look at what it's like on a class level. So if you're going to be synchronously having sessions with students in a classroom environment, this is how you can integrate it within Blackboard. Now, as a faculty member, you may be using this in two different modes, one for meetings and then one for your individual classes. So you will continue using Zoom.us to do your staffing, meetings, all the different outside activities. It's important to understand what we're about to go through is very specific to the class. So if you set up a meeting for one particular class and you have another class in Blackboard, this meeting will only be available for the class that you set it up in. So this is very powerful in being able to create class meetings specific to particular sections and then only delivering the content in a recording, for instance, to that particular session. So let's jump in and figure out how to make this happen. One of the first things you got to make sure is that in your class that you have your edit mode turned to on. That's in the upper right hand corner. So if you don't have edit mode on, you're not going to be able to do this next step. So make sure you click that button and then navigate over to the left hand side of your menu. There is a small plus sign in a circle. Highlight that plus sign and go on down to Tool Link. Once you click on the tool link, what you're going to do is you're going to create a name for your session. So because this is going to be a regular link, make it something important that the students know this is your classroom virtually. So I'm going to just call it Zoom Classroom for this particular session. Once you put that name in, click on the type below, scroll on down, and make sure you click Zoom Meeting. Once Zoom Meetings clicked, you are nearly there. Let's make it available to users by clicking the checkbox and clicking Submit. Once you've submit that into that navigation menu, you can adjust where it positions. So I just grabbed that left-hand side and dragged it up in my menu, and I'm going to put it directly under contact information because I think that's going to be an important place for students to jump in when it's meeting time. So from this point forward, you are done with integrating with Zoom. If that link wasn't there, you now know how to get it. It may actually be there in a future session because we may just integrate it default into that template. But one of the things to think about now is, how does this work next? You remembered logging in the Zoom.us, but we're now in the Blackboard environment. What's going to happen when we click that link? Well, first off, I need to make sure you understand that you have to have an account with the university for this to work. So you go through your normal ways to get that account by talking to our help desk in IT, requesting your full licensed Zoom account as a faculty member. Make sure you let them know that you need licensed account as a faculty member to be able to do these next steps. What will happen is we've integrated our Zoom account with Blackboard. So by clicking on the link, it's automatically going to know what your username is and log you into Zoom. So let's do that now. I clicked in. I have not had the login. The integration brings me directly into Zoom. Next step, I need to start looking at how I'm going to set up my meetings and how it's a little bit different than what you do in the Zoom.us. First, if you click on Schedule New Meeting, it's going to look really similar to what we've done before. The thing that's going to be different is the topic will be your course title. I say leave that as a standard way for all your synchronous sessions that you're going to be doing with students throughout the semester. It's just a good way to mark those classes as being a consistent, routine, kind of a captured simultaneous course. Now, let's say you had a Q&A session that was outside the scope of your normal course. I think in those instances, you would want to change this title because as you start collecting recordings, you'll see all your standard course sessions with the same title and the date that they were recorded. But then those one-offs or those interesting little sessions that you might have outside of the normal kind of course sessions should be labeled accordingly. Go ahead and dig up a description if you like of what you're going to cover as a topic. That's a good way for future people looking at recordings to understand what might be available in that recording. when that's going to happen. Set up the time, set up the duration, make sure the time zone's right. A lot of this stuff is going to already default be set up. The time wouldn't, because you need to, set that time specifically for the day. If you know about reoccurring meetings, go for it, set them up. In this session, I'm suggesting that you do things one by one. That way you have ultimate control of each meeting session. The one benefit to setting up a reoccurring meeting is that all of the sessions have the same URL. So for instance, if you're meeting every day, or let's say weekly on a specific days, let's say it was every Monday and Wednesday that you'll be meeting, you can set that up. You can set it up to end on a particular date, or you can do it after a certain number of occurrences. So I'll leave it up to you to figure out what kind of reoccurrence you might set up, but the benefit here is that it would do it at a consistent time. A little bit lower, I would not turn on registration. Registration just makes your users have to actually ask to be submitted to that course or get into that session before they can even get into the session. That adds an additional barrier, but there might be some reasons you'd want to set that up. I do suggest setting up security. Security is a big element of letting people into your course. A passcode, it will be a small password, a few numbers, letters that you can give to your participants, and they would have to enter in that passcode to get into your course. That's helpful for making sure only people that you send the information to can get in there. Waiting room is the one I particularly like, because what it gives me is an ability to kind of have a prep session before I let people into the course. So if I'm sitting there waiting before this session starts, I will be allowing people to get into this waiting room, and I can see that they're in the waiting room, but they're not into my course, and I can set up my presentation, my share, get my camera set up, my audio set up before I allow anybody in the course. I can even send text messages to those people in the waiting room, letting them know, hey, I'm going to be with you shortly. I'm here. I'm just getting set up for the course. And then when you're ready, you can hit an admit all button, or you can just admit people individually as needed into the course. The only downside to this is that students can change the name that they have as far as their profile in Zoom. So they could put something that isn't their actual name. So you might want to set the expectations that they at least put their first name. That way you have an idea of who they are, and it still kind of gives them the anonymity of not putting their last name. So we're not really looking at any FERPA issues. And I always suggest letting the students know that you're recording the session. So if they are talking and participating, it will be baked into the recording. But going a little bit down on this page, there's not much more that I would change. I just run with the defaults, and then I'll go ahead and hit save. So once I hit this save button, that is it. You have now set up a meeting in Zoom. One thing to note is once you hit save, you'll have the ability to upload your polling. If you know anything about polling and you've seen some of these other sessions in our Zoom, polling's very helpful. You can preload your polls there. But for now, what I'd like to do is go back to my course meetings. You'll be able to see the meetings that you've scheduled up, and notice we've done reoccurrence for 15 reoccurrences. So there you have the same URL for every reoccurrence, and you're going to notice that it increments based off those details that we had put in for the reoccurrence. One meeting ID for the remainder of that semester. Great way to be able to get this set up. As you as an instructor, you're going to be able to hit start when the meeting's there, log in Blackboard, you're able to roll. Now, what happens when you've set up a meeting and it's been recorded? Where does that recording go? Well, it's going to go over here into your cloud recordings. So cloud recordings is a feature that we should have turned on by the time you're watching these videos. It allows you to record videos right into the cloud, and then it will be processed, transcribed, and available for students to watch after the fact. But you'll have to do something as an instructor. You'll have to allow that particular meeting to be published. We just felt that if you're going to be recording these meetings, that you want to have ultimate control if someone's going to be able to view that recording after the fact. So on a regular cadence, after the processing happens, we suggest logging in, clicking cloud recordings, and ensuring that the publish switch has been turned to on. If that is deselected, students will not be able to see the recordings. So let's just go take a quick look at what it might be from a student's side on this experience. So here I am looking at it from a student's perspective, and let's just jump into that menu and see what they might see. They'll see that same Zoom classroom link, but they don't need to have a Zoom account. All they need to do is be able to click the link, and they're going to get dropped right into the same kind of interface that you've seen and created in your course. So you'll have upcoming meetings, and they'll see all the upcoming sessions that they can join. That reoccurrence will be listed, and they just click the join link and they'll be in the meeting once that meeting starts. You'll of course have set up the meeting on your end, so they'll either go in the waiting room or you'll allow them to enter in the meeting. Now, if I were to just click this link right now, you can kind of get that idea of what they might experience. So in certain cases, they're going to have to download an EXE on their computer to make sure that they can actually run that session. So there's some minor things that they may have to do to get into that meeting session, but after that's been done, you'll be able to see that they're just going to be logged directly into the meeting. So just give me a second here, and you're going to notice they are now sitting in a waiting room. This is their experience until you let them in to that particular area. So they would just be sitting here. An email is now sent to you letting you know that somebody's waiting in that waiting room. Close that out. Now, an additional thing to note is the cloud recording. So if they go to the cloud recordings, notice we did not publish the recording, so they don't see anything in their recordings. So just to show you that it is not available, and then if you go down in here, you click the switch, and of course they're going to have to refresh their screen. So we'll go ahead and get them set up here. They'll log back into their Zoom, click that Zoom classroom and go over the recordings. And now they have the availability of the recording. They can click that recording and you're going to get to a screen that looks something similar to this. Now it's going to have an audio only version of the recording they can listen to. And then it's also going to have the recording itself. Now, one of the things is when they click on this recording, it's going to do a couple things. First off, it's going to show some information right below that video. It's going to have a password, and it's not going to even show this password. I'm not going to even show it right now, but you could click this eyeball to take a look at it if you're locally on the machine. Another thing happened. I'm in Firefox right now, and it blocked the pop-up that's opening. That's okay. I'm going to just go over to my options, and I'm going to click show this pop-up to allow the pop-up to show. What now is allowing that to happen is it's automatically opened that video. You're going to be able to see that recording. You'll be able to play it, be able to watch it. One thing that's really cool is it transcribes the video, and you can click through the transcriptions and you could see different parts of that video. So you can read it from an accessibility standpoint. You're able to see it from that standpoint. You can adjust the speed to 2 times the speed if somebody's talking a little too slow and you just want to check them out like a chipmunk, or you can even turn closed captioning onto the video right there. Now, in some cases, you may have the ability to click the download button as a student. We are currently investigating if we can turn that on or off. For right now, students would be able to download published videos. That is the experience from a student perspective. Now, the one thing that we're looking at is how long these videos will be available. We have finite space in our system, and we are thinking that these videos will be available for at least 15 days after the recording has been created. So there may be a chance that those recordings will go away after 15 days, but you as an instructor do have the ability to download those recordings and post them in another area such as YouTube if you wish. So that is it from the student perspective, and that is it for how to set up and kind of manage the idea of doing those cloud recordings. Now look at our other videos on the ins and outs of cloud recording and recording in general, or just how to use the interface of Zoom to understand what's going on behind the scenes when you hit the start button or hit the stop button and you have these meetings collecting in there. Thank you for listening to today's video on how the Zoom and Blackboard classroom integration works.